Driving to Boulder, Alex, we'd see them all the time on 36. Yeah. Oh, very, yeah, because people weren't looking for them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do that opposite because we'd come down the canyon, still be dark in Lyons, 36 into Boulder, and there's so many times you got to just crank on those brakes because, you know, I mean, you're going 60, 70 miles an hour.
We'll go when as long as we need to. Mr. Chair Newsom, you run a tight ship, so we will move along.
Okay, here. We got about 3 seconds here to go.
Okay.
Now 9 o'clock. This is the meeting of the Estes Park Board of Adjustment. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, August the 4th. Meeting is now called to order. I'd first like to introduce the board members and staff. We have Joe Holtzman with us this morning.
Good morning.
I'm Wayne Newsom. I'm co-chairman. We also have another member, Jeff Moreau, but Jeff is unable to attend this morning. Then for staff, we have our community director, Randy Hunt, and our recording secretary, Karen Swanlin. There are also 2 other planners in the office, Alex Bergeron and Jeff Wober, but I don't think they're on the program with us this morning. Now is the time for public comment, and the public has the opportunity to comment on any matter that should be considered by the Board of Adjustment, but is not published on the agenda for this meeting. So if there's anyone who cared to address the board at this time on any subject that's not on the agenda, this is the opportunity. So please speak up.
We have nobody waiting to talk.
Okay. Hearing none, then we will go to the consent agenda, which only has one item on it, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Assuming that everybody has read through those minutes, does anyone see any corrections or additions or anything that needs to be done to those minutes?
I see none.
If not, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
And I second it. And I'm in favor.
I approve.
Joe, what is your? Okay, the meeting is, the minutes are approved. The main item that we have on the agenda this morning is the variance request by Habitat for Humanity at 1730 Raven Avenue. It's an applicant requesting approval of a density exceeding 8 units per acre for a partially developed lot for section 4.3C of the Estes Park Development Code. The subject property is within the RM, multiple family residential zoning district. The owner applicant is Richard J. and Lynn A. Ward, and with Van Horn Engineering. So Randy, would you please give us the staff report?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and good morning to all. The item before us is a variance for density for the property in question, and it does have a complicated history, and I've made some of that, or spelled out some of that in the staff report. I'll try and not go through every detail. There's actually even more complexity than what I put in the staff report, and it would take us till 10:30 or longer if we got through all that. But for purposes of the variance, I think we can go over it fairly quickly, although if anyone has questions or wants to delve a little deeper into some of those details in the report, I'm glad to do that. Let me share my screen. This is always an adventure. Let's see how this works. Well, okay, I can't see what I'm sharing, but I hope you can see a map of, a vicinity map, color zoning map of our location. Is that what everybody's seeing in the middle of your screen?
Well, very dim, but I've been by the property, so I know where it is.
Okay, maybe I can zoom in a little and make it
I've got
brighter.
a copy of it anyway. I've got a copy of it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I know we have
that's
a,
good.
I know
That's
we have
good.
some, we may have some others who are looking right now at their copy. Let's see, I zoomed in a little, maybe that gives us the idea. Um, I wanted to use this as kind of an explanatory tool as well as show you the vicinity. The location, of course, is right here on Raven Avenue. It's directly behind Rocky Mountain Hotel, used to be Roadway Inn. I almost called it that. It's a habit thing. But this is on the south side of Raven Avenue. What you see here on the west part of that property or that row is the condominiums for North Lake Condos. That's built here on the corner of Lone Pine and Raven Avenue. And then on the east, you don't see anything inside the area over here where my cursor is, and that is a vacant lot or vacant area. One of the important things in the history is you can also see on this vicinity map at the assessor's office, the county assessor is where we get our parcel info for these maps on our geographic information system mapping. And they show a lot line or property line right here between North Lake Condos and the vacant area. So that is part of our history. There is some evidence, I guess we'd call it, that a lot line was established in some fashion back 20, 30, well, 30 years or thereabouts ago. I'm sorry, it'd be 40 years. It's about 1980. So that's some history that we'll cover briefly in the staff report. I'm going to scroll back up so that we're all looking at the staff report. I have to scroll this way because my scroll bar is covered up by pictures of all of you folks. It's one of those Zoom things, I guess. So we'll get there in a moment. Okay, so here's our text for the staff report. I'll go to the project description, and in the description right up here, I've started with the current situation and explain what is asked to be done in the future by Habitat and the owners of the property, the wards. And then we'll get into a little of the history and kind of come back full circle to the variance request, which is relevant to what is desirable or what the applicants would see as desirable to do today. What they would like to do is take the property that we saw, divide it through the official subdivision process into 2 lots. Remember, we saw that there's some evidence that it's already divided. Our staff position, with some earlier discussions going back into last year with Habitat, is that there wasn't enough evidence to say that was done as a legal subdivision back in the day, and that our position even now is that it's only 1 lot. That lot line that the assessor shows doesn't seem to have enough evidence to show that it's there properly and legally through a subdivision process. So in discussions with Habitat, there was a lot of kind of back and forth discussion about what that lot line may have been done back in the day, what type of activity, and the history gets really complicated with that. Rather than bog us down in that history, I'll just say that we agreed to disagree, but that because the staff doesn't see but 1 lot back there behind Roadway Inn, including the condos and the vacant area, we would we have asked them to go through the subdivision process. So that in fact is what lies in the future if this variance is approved. The next step would be dividing that through a legal minor subdivision process in today's code. Meanwhile, though, the property is of interest to Habitat to develop with 6 new dwelling units there on the vacant area. There's no change at all proposed through this variant or to our knowledge in the future with the condos, with Northlake condos, except that they would like to add some parking along the east edge of the condos. And therefore, they'd like to move the lot line to accommodate that parking. From their point of view, it'd be moving the lot line. For our point of view, it'd be creating the lot line. But either way, we get to the same end result. I'll go down and show you the subdivision plat that they've proposed because it's useful to understand all this here. In fact, I'll do that now if I can do some more scrolling, and we're gonna have several rounds of scrolling here. I hope none of you get dizzy with this scrolling. I gotta admit that when I see other people doing it, especially the real fast scrolling like you do with the bar on the right side, there's a certain point where I feel like I've been on the roller coaster and I gotta get off. So I close my eyes and it helps. But meanwhile, I'll try and keep it slow in case anybody else is it has a problem with dizzy scrolling syndrome. I bet that's a real term out there somewhere. If it's not before, then in this day of Zoom meetings, I bet it shows up. Okay, so here we are at the plat, and I'm going to shrink this to show the whole thing. I know you may not be able to read the notes here, but I'll describe what we got. So here's the entire property within the dark outer boundary. Here's Raven Avenue. Here's Northlake condos and vacant land to the east. The 2 relevant lines interior on this subdivision plat are the current boundary as the applicants see it. Staff doesn't recognize it. And that's right here. If you follow my cursor, there's a dashed line that runs up and down through this area. It's actually through a little bit of the parking lot that's shown on here. What the new subdivision plat would involve, if the variance is approved, is moving that to this location here. So, and that would allow for Northlake to build this additional parking that you see rows of additional spaces over here. The idea of this, again, not directly part of our variance, but related, is that Northlake Condos actually doesn't have enough parking now for the number of units, and this would relieve some of the pressure. There would be some vehicles that I think now are obligated to park on Raven Avenue or Lone Pine or somewhere in the vicinity. I think some people are parking roadway in or parking out in a hotel rather. And this would at least relieve some of that if it's approved. Meanwhile, the vacant area over here, this eastern part, would be created as a truly legal separate lot through this process. And if you can envision a row of 6 buildings, all separated buildings along Raven Avenue on this side, that is an illustration of what Habitat proposes. Habitat and Van Horn Engineering do have a presentation that in a little bit when I finish and shut up, they'll be able to get to that. So that is waiting in the wings for you to see. It's part of your packet materials as well. Okay, back to more scrolling. Bear with me. I think this is the last time I got to scroll way up and down through all of this. Here's our staff report. And here's our description. I'll just go through the rest of this fairly quickly, and then we can go to the findings, and then I'll be done. So the history, as I say up here, is not directly pertinent, but it has some bearing. The principal thing that we're being faced with today, our variance request today, though, is to confirm the density through the variance at which North Lake Condos was built. Back in the day when this was done, uh, according to Van Horn Engineering, they have indicated that in our old code, there were 38 units per acre allowed in RM, the RM zoning district, same district we got today. And today, of course, it's 8 units per acre, considerably lower number. We don't know on our staff research whether the 38 units is actually a figure that shows up in the code. It could well be. We've got no reason to doubt or question that. And all over town, we do have condo complexes, apartment complexes that are built well over the 18 or even the 16 workforce density bonus that we've got allowable today. There's some unit complexes that are up in the 20s, 20 or more units per acre. I imagine we might have some that are in the 30s, although I can't think of any. At any rate, the point of that is that when we went down in the current code in 2000 to 8 units per acre, we left a good many of these grandfathered. That does include North Lake condos. So the direct purpose of the variance request is to confirm a new density for North Lake condos at 25.5 units per acre. That is considerably over the 8 units per acre that we would allow today. But I think the key element is it's already built. There's no proposal here to add on to North Lake condos itself. And actually, by approving the variance, they would be locked in to building no more units there unless they got an additional variance or we had a different zoning district layout altogether over there. Neither of which is proposed. My understanding is they want to add some parking and that's it for North Lake. Meanwhile, for Habitat, as I mentioned, the idea is to allow them to construct 6 units on that vacant area. And that would not in itself require a variance because the 6 units would only be at 7.38 units per acre. And that's under our current maximum of 8. So they would not need a variance to do what they're doing. But the key here is that in order to allow the lot split to happen legally, we would need a variance for North Lake condos. North Lake needs that anyway, just because they're kind of hamstrung by not being able to get building permits for something. This is a typical thing. We'd have this problem all over town, actually, and I would suggest kind of as a future item for all of us that we need to address our existing set of multifamily units that are over the 8 per acre. If we had a disaster and some of those got damaged or in a situation where they needed to rebuild in a different configuration, they'd have trouble with building permits because they're over the density standard that we require today. So that's a piece of work for the future. We definitely would like to tackle that through the comprehensive plan and code revisions for the town as a whole, but that's for a future day. Meanwhile, for North Lake, they do need a variance that would allow them, in case if we had a disaster, 3 months from now, they would not have trouble with their building permits. And this would also have the effect of allowing Habitat to be able to do their set of units, not by variance per se, but by allowing that subdivision. The subdivision depends on the variance. So that takes us into the review criteria. We do have some public comments, and you've received all those. I believe we have, I didn't do an exact count because we got a few at the last minute, I think, but I believe there were 8 comments, of which 6 were in favor of the variance and in favor of habitat specifically in their project. And two that had concerns or at least raised questions about the additional units on the overall property. You've got those. I would not want to speak for the citizens. They may wish to join us here on the meeting. I know at least some were planning to do that. So I'll not speak for them if they wish to speak for themselves. Before I go into the review criteria and the staff findings, any questions about what we've got going on?
No question for Wayne.
No questions from Joe.
Okay, very good. It's so complicated that I don't know if there's questions or not, so it's good. Maybe I either did a good job explaining, or maybe it was so convoluted and twisted that nobody could explain. But at any rate, we got through it, so thank you. Staff findings and variances, we always want to make sure those are articulated for the record. Our first staff finding has to do with special circumstances or conditions that are not common to other areas or buildings similarly situated and practical difficulty. The special circumstance in this case, usually our special circumstances are very physical. It might be a rock outcrop in the middle of a lot that keeps a residence or a building from being built within setbacks. You've seen that quite a lot on the board. In this case, our history is our special circumstance. I don't think that, I haven't even gone into all of it. There's some really bizarre things that were done back in the 80s. There, just to give you one additional hint of what we had to work through with the paperwork. There was a resolution passed by the town board in around 1980 that exempted this property and the roadway end property from all subdivision regulations. So Title 16, which is our subdivision regulations, do not apply to this project. I've never seen that before. That's real curious. So there's some of our unique history. I can't say that would ever be repeated anywhere. But at any rate, we do have a staff finding recommended to you that we surely have special circumstances in this case, and those come from our history. Number two, in practical difficulty, can there be any beneficial use of the property without the variance? We mentioned that there's a beneficial use of the property as a whole. Obviously, the condos exist and they're being occupied. We would suggest there's a special circumstance with the vacant lot, and it's probably purely on the practical side, but vacant property that's not being kept up or maintained does present some issues for maintenance and overall quality of the community. I know there are different opinions about whether the vacant lot is truly kind of a haven for junk or just a vacant lot that needs some cleaning up and attention. But I imagine some of you have at least seen the property from, drive-bys and so on, and there's not a real good upkeep of that property. It's got what we would identify as noxious weeds on it. There's some vehicles that are sort of questionable as to whether they're operative or not. We didn't go check license plates and so on, so I'm only putting that out as what some observations might show. At any rate, beneficial use of the property with some tidy new homes with habitat. We will add that from the staff point of view, habitat does a very good, solid job without exception in developing property and then making sure that its upkeep is done properly. So we're pleased to see Habitat be able to do any projects in Estes Park. They have a good track record. Whether the variance is substantial, no doubt about it. There is a big difference between 25.5 units per acre and 8 units per acre. But they are not, that's the ceiling we are proposing. They would not be adding to the condos. And as I mentioned, the habitat part of this would not need a variance if the lot split is to be approved. I think the key here on the substantial nature is, yes, it is arguably substantial, but the condos there are already built, and I'm not sure there's any case that could be made for requiring them to be removed. You know, they're people's homes basically, and that's a fundamental issue that I don't know that we want to promote. Removal of units to achieve a density standard that is over and above what we would traditionally want to see or do. Item C, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered. The condos, again, would not be changed except for the additional parking, which would benefit the neighborhood overall by taking some cars off the street. The rest of the development that's proposed by Habitat would be single-family houses, and there is a mixture of single-family and multifamily in the neighborhood, but certainly the single-family would not, measurably alter the character of the neighborhood as we would envision it. D, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of public services such as water and sewer. We did route this to all our reviewing agencies. The variance came back with no specific comment. There were comments that some of our agencies would be very interested in the future plan for Habitat. So we'll certainly route those when the development plans for those units come in, and the building permits as well. Make sure those are reviewed by our other agencies, but they had no concerns with the variance. E, whether the applicant purchased the property with knowledge of the requirement. This is an interesting one. It does appear from all our evidence that the applicants, the Habitat, believe there was a lot line there. Again, they're here with us, and I don't want to speak and put words in their mouths, but I believe they understood the lot line that there was some evidence for, just not quite enough for a true subdivision. They believe that lot line was really there, so I don't have any reason to think there was any bad faith effort to come about this with a subtlety that forced a lot line. It appears from all evidence that they thought that was there. I'll let them speak further as they see fit on this when their turn comes. F, whether the applicant's predicament can be mitigated only through some method other than a variance. Really, the only other solution in this specific case is create a new zoning district with greater density for multifamily. I will say that as we go into the comprehensive plan and code revisions for the valley or for the town as a whole, I think there's some merit to having higher density residential districts. We have a severe workforce housing shortage in Estes Park, and I'm not sure there's an easy way to fix that, or really maybe any way to fix all of that without a denser zoning district on the multifamily side. We would, I think, want to have that debate carefully and consider all the angles for it. It's not what we're proposing today. Of course, the Board of Adjustment wouldn't have the ability to create a new zoning district. But meanwhile, for North Lake condos, there's no other option beside that theoretical one. The variance is pretty much all they've got to be able to confirm what they've already got built. Number 3, if authorized, a variance shall represent the least deviation from the regulations that will afford relief. I think this one is a pretty solid yes. When if and when that lot line subdivision is done, assuming the variance is approved, then their units would be right at the 25.5 that's been proposed here. That would be the exact number. So they're not asking for additional condo units to be built here. It's all just what's there right now. Again, the only change on the property for the condos would be the parking, and that's not a density issue. Then finally, number 4, in granting such variances, the BOA may require such conditions as will on its independent judgment secure substantially the objectives of the standard, so varied or modified. The one specific condition that staff recommends is that the subdivision plat, the one we just looked at, be completed and recorded within 1 year. What that will do is solidify that the condos have the variance they need, and that the habitat area could be built as proposed. That would be the condition we would recommend. So in conclusion, staff is recommending the approval of the variance. We think the criteria are there. We would definitely propose to include the condition as we've got it worded here. And with that, Mr. Chair, I think we've covered the basics, even though it was a bit lengthy. But I'll be glad at this point to take any questions anyone has.
Joe, do you have any question?
I have no questions.
You know, for those in the audience, you'll have an opportunity to speak here in just a few minutes. But I have no questions either. I think it's a very thorough report, Randy. Thank you very much. Now then, does the applicant representative like to make comments about the project?
This is Joe Coop with Vanderhorn Engineering. Do you hear me?
I can hear you well, Joe.
You can hear me? All right, good. Well, I just want to thank Randy. I think he presented it as thoroughly as could be done. You know, I just want to add a couple things that, you know, the whole confusion between with a lot line, whether it's legal or not, that's been a pretty common practice for condominiums up until about the early 80s. And whether it's legal or not, I agree, is debatable. However, there were many condos that were done at that time. From the 60s is when the condominium processes began up until the early 80s. What they would do is they would just split the piece off as each building was built. And I guess the main thing I want to point out is if Randy could scroll to the condominium map. I'm not on a computer, I'm on an iPhone. So if he could please scroll to the condominium map, and that way everyone could see that the lot line there and the legal description. That legal description represents the boundaries of that darker line.
Yeah, I see it.
And so in a sense, when that condominium was created, those condominium unit owners only own that land that's underlying the area within the dark line. Randy's almost there, but you guys have the condominium maps in your packet there, I guess.
Yeah, I see
Yes.
it.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So it just creates a lot of vagaries and confusion as to whether it was subdivided or not. And there's been a couple properties that it was subdivided. It became its separate entity. And this one was done a little differently, which creates some of the confusion. So just doing this minor subdivision is going to clean this up. And there's several other properties around town like this that probably could use the same kind of fix. But this one is one that is obviously has a plan, and Habitat wants to do some good and benefit for the community. So I think this is a good project. I think the variance is one way to go to help clean this up and solve the problems that were done back in the 80s with condominiums. And I guess the other thing I'd just like to say is that I think what we're doing with it, moving the lot line a little bit to the east. You know, currently the way the property is used, it looks rather congested. And then you've got all the vacant cars that are parked out in the grass. I think once we move that lot line and build more parking lot for the condominium use, I think that's going to improve the look and the visual appeal of the entire complex. Not to mention the extra lots that we're going to try and build for habitat. But I think that's really all I have to add in terms of the technical aspects of this. I think Randy presented it really well. So thanks, Randy. I think it cleared it up in my mind too. But I think Dave Emerson with Habitat, I think he has a little presentation that he wants put together too. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Joe. I assume you can hear me. So Randy, I don't know if there's a way to share my screen, if I'm able to do that. You probably have
Dave,
to.
I think you can if you have a little box at the bottom, a menu bar at the bottom that has several icons, and one of them should say share on it or share screen. Do you have
Yeah,
that?
I think you just have to unshare yours, and then I can do that. There we go. Okay, cool, great. Yeah, and thank you, Randy, for it's been a long journey working with this project, and Randy and the staff have been very helpful, and Joe trying to work through this. So I'm the director of Habitat St. Vrain Valley. We merged in 2017 with Estes Park Habitat, the affiliate there, and the idea was simply to take our expertise, and we're a little bit bigger affiliate. We've been around for over 30 years, and marry that with the local efforts happening in Estes Park. So we've built one house, and the family has moved in on Greyhawk, and we're about halfway through the second house. Those are permanently affordable home ownership products. Home ownership is what we do. And so we're really excited about this, but we knew it had some questions and so forth. So I'm gonna try to be sensitive to time, but I did wanna make sure folks understood our program, because there can be a lot of misconceptions. But first and foremost, who we serve. So we serve individuals who have a clear housing need, but they also have to have an ability to repay an affordable mortgage. And not only we make sure it's affordable by making sure that their payment is not more than 30% of their income, but also that they have the wherewithal to, by virtue of that affordable mortgage, to maintain their home. So when we're looking at Estes Park, we're serving people and families that are making between $32,000 and $60,000 a year. They have a steady income or manageable debt. They go through a very lengthy process of credit checks, background checks, interviews. We do budgeting. It's quite a process just to get selected. And then once they're selected, they have to put in sweat equity to help build their house. So a lot of folks may be coming from a landlord-tenant relationship, so going to a home ownership product. We want to make sure they're prepared. Part of that is knowing about your house and how it's built. But we also do a lot of training classes to prepare people. And so that's home maintenance classes. Individuals are required to do financial fitness classes. We have a good neighbor class that can be tailored to the area that we're building in. So if there are certain expectations by virtue of a covenant controlled area or what have you, during that process where the house is being built, we're working with the homeowner. So they go into that, when they purchase their home and they move in, they are understanding of those expectations. just backing up how homeowners are impacted, I won't belabor this one, but in 2018, Habitat Colorado did a study across the state of existing habitat homeowners, and the impact is just extraordinary in terms of financial health for those homeowners. It really grounds them in the area that they're choosing to live and work, with improved health, increased savings. I've been doing this. I started as a volunteer years and years ago, but then switched over in 2006. So I've had the great pleasure of working with families with small children, or young children rather, and seeing them grow up, graduate high school and graduate college. And in some cases, it's been that long. And so I definitely see the improved educational outcomes and so forth. And lastly, a reduced need for public assistance. That's pretty profound, what we see with reduction in Medicaid and CHIP and things of that nature. One of the things that we've learned over the years and try to do a better and better job of is making sure that our homes blend in to the community. So at St. Vrain Valley, Estes, collectively, we've built in 26 different neighborhoods, this affiliate, in Dacono, Lyons, Erie, Longmont, and Estes Park. And really what we want to make sure of is that when you drive by a residential area that has habitat homes in it, you see no discernible difference between those homes. And so we spend a lot of time with our architects before we go into a neighborhood, really look at what's in that neighborhood and how we can adapt. We've done single family detached, attached, condo, townhome, etc., just our affiliate. And in this case, single family detached seems like a very natural fit with what we see across the street. And while our final architecture is not obviously done at this point, we're very confident we can create a product that's going to look very good. And through that design, set up homeowners to be successful in maintaining their house. So really, the specific opportunity here is, as we said, is to develop this with 6 single-family detached homes. The homes will be permanently affordable. So that means that the homeowner gets to earn a rate of return as long as they're in the home. So it's not something where they're not growing equity, growing an asset for use for their family, like in traditional home ownership. It just means that when they sell, they will sell at a price and in a manner that allows another family, another individual to leverage that opportunity. So it will become a part of Estes Park's portfolio. And along those lines, one of the things that we've learned over the last 3 years is we have been able to establish a relationship with Estes Park Housing Authority, working with Rita and now Naomi. They have been an incredible partner in working with us, helping us to understand the lay of the land. And they have agreed to administer that permanently affordable provision. Now that's something we do, but it's really ideal to have someone in Estes Park who has a portfolio of home ownership product already, and not all housing authorities do home ownership, but Estes Park does. And so this would just add to their portfolio. It's a local connection, so when someone does look to sell, they have a group of folks who may be ready and qualified buyers. So it's quite an advantage there. So we're really excited about that. That's all I had, but I did want to take a moment, if I could pass the baton. We do have a homeowner here we're building her house now. Brenda Wiss is in the process of doing her sweat equity and her educational components. And if I could allow her just to give her viewpoint of what it's meant to be a part of the program and what she's looking forward to, I think that would be great. And then afterwards, I'd be willing to answer any questions. So Brenda, are you there?
We'd like to hear from her.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My name is Brenda Wiss. I've lived in Estes Park for almost 7 years now. I work for the town. I'm an administrative assistant for the water division, and I've worked for the town for 4 years. When I first moved to Estes Park, it was an affordable town for me. My personal circumstances and the cost of housing in Estes was affordable for me when I first came to this town and brought my kids into the school. But my personal circumstances have changed, and the cost of housing in this town has gone up like crazy in the last 7 years. So I have 2 teenagers, I'm a single mom, and we currently live in a home that is owned by the town of Estes Park. It's part of their employee retention program and home ownership program. But the problem is we can only stay in that house for 3 years. So before I even moved into the house, I was stressing and worried about where I was going to go next, because that will not get my son through high school. So it's a constant stressor and worry, and just having that uncertainty for my kids who are teenagers was really stressful for us. But thankfully, we've been able to partner with Habitat for Humanity, which means that we will have a permanent home in Estes Park that we can afford, that will get both of my kids through high school. They'll be able to always have a home that they can come back to. And it's just been really huge and important to us as a family and our personal security for the 3 of us. Another thing, since I have been partnering with Habitat for Humanity, I have had people reach out to me and ask me about the program. And we all know that there is a huge housing need in Estes Park for young teachers, for nurses, people who work at the hospital, people who have the lesser paying jobs within the town. It's become nearly impossible for us to own homes within Estes, but we definitely make a contribution to this community. We love living here just as much as everyone else, and I'm just really grateful that I've been able to partner with Habitat, and I would love for more families to have that opportunity in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. So I think that was it. The one thing I guess I did not mention that I forgot to mention it. We do have this property under contract with the wards. We've been working since 2011. It's been under contract. Most recently in the last 2 years, we've started to invest in the engineering to get ready to develop it. So and the applicant is here, and it is under site control from that standpoint, but it's obviously predicated on this variance, whether we move forward.
Say, this is Wayne, and I have a question. With the current owner of a condo, and say they decide to sell it, then does the purchaser have to meet the same qualifications as the original owner?
So when you say the condo, so the condominium, I assume you're talking about North Lake, is
I'm talking about Habitat Home. Pardon me, I should have said condo, Habitat Home.
Okay, so with the Habitat Home, the ones that we have done, the one that we just finished, and Brenda's home, and going forward, that is permanently affordable, meaning that they would have to work with a qualified buyer under, I believe, 80% AMI. In some cases, we've had to do 60%, but and that's who we're working with. But 80% AMI, moderate income, would be a qualified buyer. And then the way it works, it gets marketed. qualified buyers can put in an offer up to, a price. There's a formula, and then once they're established as qualified and they have that bona fide offer, then that goes to that second owner. Prior to the house we just completed, there was a period of affordability on Habitat homes. So it was a 20-year period. So going forward, it's permanent. Backwards, there was a period at which time after that period, it did go to market rate.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if I may expand, one of the things that we're excited about with the permanent affordability is the property taxes will go up in a more moderated fashion. Some of the things we've seen elsewhere is it's great that the assessed value is very, very high for our homeowners, but without that, more moderated limit on the sales price going up, those property taxes make the carrying costs a little bit cumbersome. So this will benefit our families and obviously the next family.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that has a question for him? Or is there anyone in the audience who'd like to present information on this request, either for or against?
Yeah, we do have some audience members, Wayne.
Okay.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, if
Yes,
there's
my name is
anyone.
Craig Ellsworth, I'd like to speak in favor.
Craig wants to speak.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Craig Ellsworth. I reside in the Estes Valley at 1786 Devils Gulch Road. I've been a volunteer with Habitat for Humanity building homes in the U.S. and abroad for 15 years. Today, I'm speaking both as a board member of Habitat for Humanity and as a resident of the Estes Valley. I'd like to begin with a brief overview of Habitat for Humanity in the Estes Valley, followed by data from the 2016 Estes Park Area Housing Needs Assessment Report regarding our community's critical need to build affordable workforce housing. Since 1993, Habitat for Humanity has built 15 affordable homes for families in the Estes Valley. Habitat completed construction of the 15th home in June of this year for Diana Rascon and her family. Diana has been a resident of Estes Park for 18 years. She has 3 children and works at the Estes Park Health. Construction of our 16th home in Estes Park is well underway, and I appreciate Brenda speaking this morning as our future homeowner. As she mentioned, she works for the town of Estes Park, has 2 children, and has lived here for 7 years. According to the 2016 housing report, which I believe you're all familiar, the scarcity of workforce housing is adversely affecting at least 85% of all of our employers. Employers have reported increased difficulty recruiting and retaining workers to fill positions, which puts our economy at risk. In 2015, about 1,030 workers were not hired or left their positions primarily due to a lack of housing. Over 1,100 workers, or 16%, stated that they were seriously considering leaving Estes Park area employment in part because of the inability to find affordable housing. Those considering leaving their jobs are predominantly employed in the service industries and retail, as well as government, healthcare, and education. Based on estimated catch-up and keep-up needs, that report indicated our community needed to build, on average, 300 to 340 affordable units per year by 2020. As you know, we've fallen well short of that and are falling further behind. Land opportunities available for affordable workforce housing in Estes Valley are severely limited. This Raven Avenue parcel of land represents a rare opportunity to build affordable workforce housing. The benefits of approving this request extend well beyond the 6 families for whom Habitat will build homes. Additional beneficiaries include, but aren't limited to, our business owners, residents, visitors, schools, police and fire departments, medical center, and municipal agencies. Given this rare opportunity, the critical need for affordable workforce housing, and benefits to our community, I urge the Board of Adjustments to approve Habitat for Humanity's density variance request. Thank you for your time this morning, gentlemen, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who desires to speak that has something additional that hasn't already been brought up that they would like to mention? Or if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak against the project, please speak up.
I do not see anybody raising their hand right now. Oh, yes, we have
Okay.
one.
Go ahead. Give your name and address, please.
My name is Gregory Perrick, and we own the property at 1747 Raven Avenue. And we have owned this property since 1983. And the whole thing, we are for Habitat for Humanity. It's the problem I see with the 18 units across the street from us. The children have no safe place to play. Families, you don't notice families picnicking on a parking lot or a fire lane. And we see the lot that's right across the street from us, that this is a wonderful place to choose for houses for humanity. We just, our duplex is on just under half an acre, and parking sometimes when the neighbors come in, and I'm talking on this side of Raven, can be a problem. And I just think 6 houses on this property needs to be scaled back to more 3 or 4. And we think that would be ideal. Where, I don't know where the green belt is going to be, where children, these are going to be families with children, and children need to have safe places to play. There's some beautiful tall willow trees on the east of the property. Are these trees going to be cut down to put houses in there? This is yet to be determined. But we are not against this. I just think the request for this many, 6 units, in my opinion, and I've lived here in Estes since 1975. This is just too many. We are stewards of the land, and we need to take care of this for future generations. And I guess I've spoken. And like I say, we're not against it. And it's basically a good plan. I think it needs to have a serious look at the housing proposed for the property. The
Okay,
density.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. That brings up a question too, as far as the yards for these. I have seen one Habitat location that they had fenced the yard for the little kids. And I just wondered, is there any plan for fencing, or how would they propose the yard?
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Perrick, I certainly appreciate the comments. We have not gotten around to those level of details, and the subdivision process will certainly bring that out in terms of overall density, whether it's 4 or 6 or what have you. Obviously, we want to be good stewards of the land in terms of just the number of people that we can serve, given that land is finite. In terms of fences, we certainly have done fences with many of our projects. The factor that we go into there is really what is the norm in that neighborhood? Is that something that homeowners, if they so desire, would want to put up later? But on a single family detached product, generally, there are fences. So I would suspect that would be something that we would want to do, just when people have pets or they have their sense of their area and so forth. So the short answer is that has not been finally determined, but we absolutely do fences in many of our projects. It's just not formulaic, I guess.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment, either for, unless it's something that's already been brought up, or against? If so, please speak up. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments,
Yeah, I don't see any more raised hands, and I have nobody on the phone or email.
okay, Joe, do you have any other questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, then I'd request a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
I'd second it. Just a motion.
Mr.
Go
Chair
ahead.
and Member Holtzman, would that include the suggested condition? It'd be good to clear up whether it does or doesn't. That being the plat for the future plat within 1 year to be finished up.
Yes.
Okay, then I recommend,
that.
so to include the plat that the staff is recommending.
Correct.
Well, I vote yes.
And I vote yes.
Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, then the other thing on the agenda, do we have any other comments from the reports from the staff?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any reports today. I'll ask Karen to confirm, but I believe our August meeting, Karen, do we have a meeting in August? I'm sorry, this is August. Good grief.
Yeah.
Last I checked, it was April. I'm real confused here. September 1st, I believe we do have a meeting with at least one item. Karen, is that?
That's correct. We have one item for September 1st.
Okay, so September 1st is the Tuesday before Labor Day. That's how the calendar falls this year. So wanted to make sure you all were aware. It looks like we do have that one agenda item, but it being the Tuesday before shouldn't interfere, I hope, with the holiday plans, whatever they may be. Mr. Chair, that's all I've got for you today.
Well, thank you to everyone who's attended, and particularly those who are not members of the board but have been listening in on this Zoom. And so the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was very interesting.